What's your true life story that nobody will believe? My dad was married 2 times before my mom. When he was with his second wife, he would travel a lot for work, which I knew. What I didn't know is that one night he came home to find his wife in bed with another man. Actually walked in on them. He left the room and came back with a gun, shot the man dead, and wounded his wife. He turned himself in immediately and was sent to prison. He was sentenced to 10 years in a maximum security prison. In the last year he was in prison, which was the 4th year, he got out for good behavior, and since the judge ruled it a crime of passion, he met the prison minister. The prison minister was my mom. My dad is a murderer. My mom was the minister. I am the product of a conjugal visit. On my way home from school about 7 years ago, I was sitting at a very busy intersection waiting to turn left. It was very gloomy outside. All of a sudden, it sounded and felt like the back of my car exploded. There was also a quick, very bright light that flashed in my rearview mirror. I panicked and noticed immediately after that the stoplights stopped working, and it also began to rain. I looked out in the distance and saw a lightning strike. I also looked on either side of me where there was a ton of traffic, and everyone was staring at me like this. That's right, I was struck by lightning. Okay, here we go. I had to jerk into a cup to count my soldiers because I had a long-time testicle infection. Sorry, you have to use the children's room. Every other room is occupied. So as I enter the room, I see Sesame Street books, stuffed animals, colorful walls, and a clock on the wall having animals as numbers. The nurse tells me that there are no porn magazines available, and I tried to be funny and said, "Doesn't matter, Ernie and Bert are enough for me to get off." She did not get the joke. Then, she asked me if I know how to masturbate, and gave me a quick rundown on how to masturbate, all the while looking disgusted and angry. Okay, so there I was, in a children's room in a urology clinic trying to masturbate into a cup, while stuffed animals were looking at me with a nurse right in front of the door. I heard her telling the other nurses my fetish about Sesame Street. They all laughed. I had to start over. When I got to the point where I thought that I could fill the cup, the fucking clock on the wall started to moo and make fucking loud cow noises because it was 12 o'clock. I must have sighed very loudly because the whole floor went nuts and started laughing even harder. Start over NR2. When I finally finished and left the room, the nurses were still laughing. My cousin and I, both males, were about 12 years old, and as most 12-year-old boys like to do, we were climbing things. We decided to climb onto the roof of a house and everything went smooth. We got up and hung out and talked about how awesome we were for conquering this mountain of a house. Well, we go to get down, and we have to drop down and hang and get our feet on a railing on the back porch. My cousin goes first, and he gets down no problem exactly as planned, so I was feeling confident as ever. I scoot to the side of the house and grab the roof and drop down to hang. Well, my grip wasn't what I thought it was, and I lost hold of the house, and just like in the movies, landed with one leg on each side of the rail. I just rolled off to my right so that I would land on the deck and could cry in the fetal position. But I didn't realize the grill was right there, so I hit my head on the grill on the way down. I had to go to the hospital because my sack was black and blue, and a nice young nurse got to scan my balls to make sure there was no serious damage. Luckily, there were no lasting effects, and I can look back on it and laugh now. TLDR Humpty. Dumptied, but luckily didn't need put back together. Like the video for part 2, and don't forget to subscribe for more Reddit videos. I grew up in a bit of a messed up family, had basically no interaction with my father. My mother was married to my stepfather, who was an alcoholic. My mother was codependent, and she got really crazy when she was drinking, and she would throw me out of the house. So, when I was 12, this happened again. I ended up hanging around at the train station, just having no clue where to go, what to do. This is where this guy picks me up. I am 12. I had no clue. I was just really upset, and I actually follow this guy to his hotel room. He is like 30. And here comes the amazing part. He just bought me dinner, did not touch me at all, takes me around the next day, and disappeared from my life after this. I then went back home, because where would I go? To this day, I cannot believe how lucky I was. And I realized this quickly afterwards. It made me realize that good things can happen to me. It pushed me to work really hard in school, because I would only have a place to go if I earned it myself, and education helps, and it made me appreciate people a lot more. Today I have a PhD, a good job, live in a lovely place. I am only missing a boyfriend and a cat. I met a guy online. Fell in love. We were a couple for 5 or so months. Began to make plans to meet. Before that could happen, his sister was unalived in a car accident. Meeting plans were put on hold. He started to pull away. I went to Baton Rouge with the Red Cross after Hurricane Katrina. While there, I found out I was being catfished. I then revenge effed another guy I knew from online for a couple days. He turned out to be a top-notch douche. I went home and called my catfisher. There was no car accident, his sister was alive, and it was basically a panicked attempt to delay meeting. I ended up eventually forgiving him. I flew across the country, met him, and fell in love in person. I moved out there a couple months later. Everything was amazing. We were so happy. For a year. Then he moved for his job, and despite his protests, I loved where we lived and had a great job, followed him. 3 weeks later, he came to my apartment after work one day. He broke down in tears and told me he was getting married that weekend in an arranged marriage. 36 hours later, I watched him get on a plane and haven't seen him since. Tomorrow is his 7th wedding anniversary. My uncle was alived in Egypt because he was eaten by a crocodile in the Nile while he was there doing voluntary work as a doctor. A cousin of my grandmother was paralyzed and could suddenly walk at the age of 22. The same month he finished revalidation, he went to work on the field and got stuck with his pants in the tractor and was totally powdered. My great-great-grandfather, also doctor, died in prison because they left him to die because he helped a bad guy from WW2 survive. The cousin of my grandfather was unalived during the World War II because there was an internal conflict between the Flemish and Walloons in Belgium. A Walloon threw a grenade, and my grandfather's cousin saved his friends by lying on it.